My daughter-in-law drugged my coffee for 2 years, stole my $22 million estate, and had me declared mentally unfit. You'll die alone in that facility, you pathetic old fool, she whispered as the orderly dragged me away. But what she didn't know was that my late husband had left me something far more valuable than money. The truth. Let me tell you how I discovered it, and how I made her pay for every single lie. My name is Eleanor. I'm 70 years old now, and I'm going to tell you a story that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. A story about betrayal so deep it nearly destroyed me. But also about justice so sweet it restored my faith in everything I thought I'd lost. 5 years ago, I believed I had the perfect life. My husband, Thomas, had passed away 3 years earlier from complications of diabetes, leaving me a beautiful estate in the countryside valued at $22 million, a portfolio of rental properties across 3 states, and a chain of boutique hotels that generated steady income. We'd built everything from nothing, Thomas and I. 2 kids from poor families who met in college, fell in love, and decided to conquer the world together. Our daughter, Rebecca, was our pride and joy. She became a doctor, married another doctor, and gave us 2 beautiful grandchildren. But this story isn't about Rebecca. This story is about our son, Daniel. Daniel was 38 years old, charming, ambitious, and worked as an investment banker in the city. He'd always been the more difficult child, the one who pushed boundaries, who wanted everything yesterday. But he was still my son, and I loved him with every fiber of my being. Then he met Charlotte. I still remember the day Daniel brought her home for the first time. It was a crisp autumn Saturday, and I was in the garden pruning the roses Thomas had planted years ago. I did that every weekend, talking to his memory, telling him about my week, asking him for advice the way I'd done for 42 years of marriage. "Mom!" Daniel called out, walking across the lawn with a woman I'd never seen before. "I want you to meet someone very special." Charlotte was stunning. There's no other word for it. She had that kind of beauty that makes people stop and stare. Long auburn hair that caught the sunlight, green eyes that seemed to sparkle with intelligence, and a smile that could melt ice. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and she moved with the grace of someone who'd been taught from birth how to command a room. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you. Daniel talks about you constantly." I liked her immediately, or rather, I liked the person she was pretending to be. That's the thing about master manipulators. They know exactly how to become whoever you need them to be. Over the next few months, Charlotte became a fixture in our family. She attended every Sunday dinner, remembered everyone's birthdays, brought thoughtful gifts, and seemed genuinely interested in our family history. She asked about Thomas, looked through old photo albums with me, and even cried when I told her about how he proposed to me in a diner because we couldn't afford anything fancy. "That's real love," she said, wiping her eyes. "Not the expensive restaurants or the diamond rings, just 2 people choosing each other." Oh, how those words would haunt me later. Daniel proposed to Charlotte 6 months after they met. The engagement was lavish. He rented out an entire restaurant, hired a string quartet, and presented her with a ring that must have cost him 6 months' salary. Charlotte cried and said yes, and I cried because my little boy was getting married. Rebecca pulled me aside at the engagement party. "Mom, don't you think this is all happening a bit fast? 6 months isn't very long to know someone." "Your father proposed to me after 4 months," I reminded her. "When you know, you know." Dad was different. He was what? Poor? Working 3 jobs to put himself through college? Daniel has a good career, he's mature, and Charlotte is lovely. Don't be so cynical, sweetheart. Rebecca looked at me with those serious brown eyes she'd inherited from Thomas. "Mom, I'm a doctor. I spend my days reading people, looking for signs that something's wrong beneath the surface. And Charlotte, there's something about her that doesn't add up. The way she's always watching us, calculating. Have you noticed she never talks about her own family? She told us her parents died when she was young. She was raised by an aunt who passed away last year. The poor girl is all alone in the world. That's probably why she's so eager to be part of our family. Or maybe that's exactly what she wants you to think, Rebecca said quietly. Mom, promise me you'll be careful. Protect yourself. Don't sign anything. Don't give her access to your accounts. And definitely don't— Rebecca Ann Patterson, I interrupted, using her full name the way I did when she was a child. I raised you better than to be so suspicious of people. Charlotte is going to be your sister-in-law. She's going to be family. I expect you to treat her with kindness and respect. Rebecca hugged me tightly. I love you, Mom. I just want you to be safe. I'm a 65-year-old woman with all my faculties intact, a good lawyer, and your father's business sense. I think I can handle one sweet girl who loves your brother. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment I sealed my fate. The moment I chose to believe in Charlotte's lies instead of Rebecca's instincts. The wedding was beautiful. Charlotte wore a vintage Vera Wang gown, and Daniel looked like a prince in his custom tuxedo. I sat in the front row, dabbing my eyes with a handkerchief, while Rebecca sat beside me with a forced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Charlotte's side of the church was notably empty. I don't have many friends, she explained when I asked about it. I've moved around a lot for work, and I'm quite shy, actually. Daniel is really my whole world now. That should have been my first red flag. A beautiful, successful woman in her 30s with no close friends, no family, no one from her past. But I was too caught up in the romance of it all to ask the hard questions. After the wedding, Charlotte suggested that she and Daniel move into the estate with me. It's so big, Mom, she said, calling me Mom for the first time. And you're here all alone in this huge house. Wouldn't it be nice to have company? We could save money for our own place, and I could help you with anything you need. It seemed like a wonderful idea at the time. The estate had 8 bedrooms, and I was rattling around in all that space by myself. Having Daniel and Charlotte there would fill the house with life again, with laughter and conversation and the sound of family. Of course, I said, hugging her. Thomas and I always wanted this house to be filled with family. You're both more than welcome. Rebecca called me that night. Mom, please tell me you didn't agree to let them move in. Why are you so against this, their family? Because once they're in that house, it's going to be very difficult to get them out. Mom, I've been doing some research. Charlotte's financial situation doesn't add up. She claims she works in marketing, but I can't find any record of her employment anywhere. Her LinkedIn profile is vague. Her references are impossible to verify, and— Rebecca, stop this, I said firmly. Your brother loves her, she loves him, and I love them both. This conversation is over. I hung up the phone feeling hurt and angry. Why couldn't Rebecca just be happy for her brother? Why did she have to poison this beautiful moment with her suspicions and doubts? That phone call was the beginning of a rift between Rebecca and me that would last for 2 terrible years. A rift that Charlotte encouraged with subtle comments and concerned looks. I'm so sorry your daughter doesn't approve of me, Charlotte would say, her eyes filling with tears. I've tried so hard to be part of this family, but she just won't give me a chance. Don't worry about Rebecca, I assured her. She'll come around. She's just protective of me because her father died. You're so understanding, Mom. Not everyone would be so kind to the daughter-in-law who's caused family drama. Caused family drama. Notice how she phrased that? Even then, she was planting seeds, making herself the victim, making Rebecca look like the problem. Daniel and Charlotte moved into the east wing of the estate on a bright Saturday morning. They brought very little with them, just some clothes, a few pieces of furniture, some boxes of personal items. We believe in living simply, Charlotte explained. Material possessions aren't important to us. Family is what matters. Those first few months were lovely, I have to admit. Charlotte cooked elaborate dinners, filled the house with fresh flowers, and sat with me in the evenings to watch old movies. She asked questions about Thomas, about the business he'd built, about how I'd managed everything after he died. "You're so strong, Mom," she would say. "I don't know how you do it all. Managing the hotels, keeping up with the rental properties, maintaining this huge estate. It must be exhausting." "Thomas taught me well," I replied. "And I have good people helping me, accountants, property managers, lawyers. They keep everything running smoothly. Still, it must be a lot of stress, especially at your age. Have you ever thought about simplifying things? Maybe selling some of the properties, reducing your workload?" I laughed. "Absolutely not. Thomas and I built this empire together. These properties are our legacy. I plan to pass them on to you and Daniel and Rebecca when I'm gone. But until then, I'm holding on to every single one." Something flickered in Charlotte's eyes then, just for a second. It was so quick I almost missed it. But it was there, a flash of frustration, of calculation, of hunger. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I completely understand. It's your legacy, your life's work. I just worry about you, that's all. You do so much." Looking back now, I understand that was the moment Charlotte realized I wasn't going to hand everything over voluntarily. That was when she started planning phase 2 of her operation. It started so subtly I didn't even notice at first. It began with the coffee. Every morning, Charlotte would bring me coffee in bed. "You work so hard, Mom," she'd say with that sweet smile. "Let me take care of you for once." It was good coffee, too. She'd buy these expensive beans from a specialty roaster in the city, grind them fresh every morning, and bring them to me in Thomas's favorite mug, a blue ceramic one he'd bought on our honeymoon in Mexico. "You're too good to me," I'd tell her, gratefully sipping the rich, dark brew. "Your family, Mom. This is what families do." The coffee always made me feel a bit drowsy afterward, but I chalked it up to age. I was 65 after all. It was natural to feel more tired than I used to. Natural to need a little nap after breakfast. Natural to feel slightly foggy sometimes. Except it wasn't natural at all. Charlotte was putting small doses of benzodiazepines in my morning coffee. Not enough to knock me out completely, but enough to make me confused, disoriented, forgetful. Enough to make me seem like I was losing my grip on reality. But I didn't know that then. Then, I just thought I was getting old. About 2 months after they moved in, I started having trouble with simple things. I'd forget where I put my car keys. I'd tell Charlotte the same story twice in one day. I'd walk into a room and forget why I'd gone there. "Mom, are you feeling all right?" Charlotte would ask with concern. "You seem a bit scattered lately." "I'm fine, dear. Just getting older, I suppose." "Maybe you should see a doctor, just to make sure everything's okay." I waved off her concern. "I'm fine, Charlotte. Really, just a bit tired." But the episodes got worse. One morning, I couldn't remember if I'd taken my blood pressure medication. Another day, I left the stove on after making tea and only noticed because Charlotte came running into the kitchen, panicked. "Mom, the stove has been on for hours. You could have started a fire." I stared at the burner, completely confused. I didn't remember leaving it on. I didn't remember making tea at all. "I'm so sorry," I said, feeling genuinely frightened. "I don't know what's wrong with me." Charlotte hugged me, but I felt her body tense with what I thought was worry. Now I know it was excitement. Her plan was working. Daniel started noticing too. "Mom, Charlotte's right. You should see someone. Rebecca's a doctor. Maybe she could recommend someone?" "No," I said quickly. Rebecca and I still weren't speaking much. "I'll find my own doctor." Charlotte immediately had a suggestion. "Dr. Harrison Mitchell. He's supposed to be the best neurologist in the state. Let me make you an appointment." I should have wondered how she knew about the best neurologist. I should have questioned why she was so eager to get me to a specific doctor. But I was scared and confused and grateful that someone was taking charge. Dr. Mitchell was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and expensive suits. His office was all dark wood and leather chairs, with framed degrees covering one wall. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, shaking my hand, "your daughter-in-law has told me about your symptoms. Let's run some tests." The tests were extensive. Blood work, cognitive assessments, memory exercises, brain scans. Through it all, Charlotte sat in the waiting room, the perfect picture of a concerned daughter-in-law. A week later, Dr. Mitchell called me back to his office. Charlotte insisted on coming with me. "Mrs. Patterson," Dr. Mitchell said gravely, "I'm afraid the results aren't good. You're showing early signs of dementia, possibly Alzheimer's disease. The cognitive decline is mild now, but it will progress." The room started spinning. Dementia. Alzheimer's. My mother had died of Alzheimer's when I was 30. I'd watched her slowly forget everything: her children's names, her own name, how to eat, how to speak. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever witnessed. "No," I whispered. "That can't be right. I'm only 65. "Early onset dementia can strike at any age," Dr. Mitchell said sympathetically. "But don't worry. With proper care and medication, we can slow the progression." Charlotte took my hand, tears streaming down her face. "We'll get through this together, Mom. Daniel and I will take care of you, I promise." I was too devastated to notice the way Dr. Mitchell and Charlotte exchanged a brief look. Too shocked to wonder why he was so quick to diagnose such a serious condition after just one round of tests. That night, Charlotte made a special dinner, my favorite pot roast with roasted vegetables. "You need to keep your strength up," she said, filling my plate. "And here's your evening coffee. I added some cinnamon, just the way you like it." The coffee made me feel even more confused than usual. I remember Daniel talking about work, about some big deal he was closing, but his words seemed to swim in and out of focus. I remember dropping my fork and watching it clatter on the floor in slow motion. I remember Charlotte helping me to bed, her voice soothing and kind. "It's okay, Mom. The medication the doctor prescribed can make you drowsy at first. You'll adjust. Let me help you." What I didn't know was that there was no medication from Dr. Mitchell. The pills Charlotte gave me every day were sedatives mixed with drugs that enhanced the effects of the benzodiazepines she was putting in my coffee. I wasn't sick at all. I was being systematically poisoned by the woman I'd welcomed into my home. The next 6 months were a blur. Charlotte documented everything, every confused moment, every forgotten conversation, every time I got lost in my own house. She recorded videos on her phone, took photos, kept a detailed journal. "Mom forgot to turn off the water in the bathtub," she'd write. "Had to shut it off before it flooded. She didn't remember drawing the bath at all. Mom asked me 3 times today if we'd had lunch. She's getting worse." Found Mom wandering in the garden at midnight in her nightgown. She thought she was going to meet Thomas for breakfast. She didn't realize he's been dead for 3 years. None of these things happened the way she described them. The bathtub incident. I'd started running water for a bath. Then Charlotte called me away to help her with something in the kitchen. By the time I remembered the water, it had nearly overflowed. The lunch questions I'd asked once, genuinely couldn't remember, asked again an hour later to confirm, and then Charlotte twisted it into 3 times. The garden incident. I couldn't sleep and went outside to water the roses. I was fully dressed, perfectly coherent, and knew exactly what year it was. But Charlotte's video showed only me standing in the garden at midnight, and her voiceover claimed I was confused and disoriented. She was building a case against me, and I had no idea. Rebecca tried to reach out during this time. She called, sent emails, even showed up at the house a few times. But Charlotte always ran interference. "Your mother isn't feeling well today," she'd tell Rebecca at the door. "Maybe you could come back another time? She's resting. The doctors say she needs peace and quiet. She's asked not to be disturbed. I'm sorry, Rebecca, but I have to respect her wishes." I didn't know Rebecca was trying to visit. Charlotte never told me. She'd delete Rebecca's voicemails before I could hear them, intercept her emails, make excuses about why we couldn't talk on the phone. "Rebecca's still being difficult about me," Charlotte would say sadly. "She called again today, trying to stir up trouble. I didn't want to upset you, so I told her you were resting. I hope that's okay?" "Of course," I'd say, feeling hurt that my daughter still hadn't accepted Charlotte. "Thank you for protecting me from the drama." Drama that didn't exist. Rebecca wasn't trying to stir up trouble. She was desperately trying to save me. But I didn't know that. Charlotte had poisoned our relationship as effectively as she'd poisoned my body. Daniel was worried, but ultimately believed Charlotte's version of events. Why wouldn't he? She was his wife. She was caring for his mother full-time, and she seemed genuinely devoted to helping me. "Maybe we should think about getting Mom some professional help," Daniel suggested one evening. I was in bed. I was in bed a lot by that point, but I could hear them talking in the hallway outside my room. "Like what?" Charlotte asked. "I don't know. Maybe a care facility? Somewhere with nurses who specialize in dementia?" "Daniel, no. I could never send Mom away. She took us in. She's been so good to us. I won't abandon her like that." "But you're exhausted, honey. You're with her 24/7. You've given up your whole life to take care of her." "She's family. This is what family does." I felt tears running down my face as I listened. Charlotte was an angel. She'd sacrificed everything to care for me, and here I was, becoming a burden on her and Daniel. Maybe I should go to a facility. Maybe I should make it easier for everyone. These were the thoughts Charlotte had planted in my mind. The guilt, the shame, the feeling that I was a problem that needed to be solved. This was all part of her plan. About 8 months after my diagnosis, Charlotte suggested that Daniel be added to my bank accounts. "Just in case, Mom," she explained. "If something happens and you need Daniel to pay bills or handle your finances, it would be so much easier if he already had access." It made sense. Daniel was my son, after all. I trusted him completely. So I signed the papers Charlotte had already prepared, adding Daniel's name to every account. That same week, she suggested I should update my will. "You told me Thomas wanted everything to be simple when he passed," Charlotte said. "No complicated trusts, no legal battles, just everything to you directly. Maybe you should do the same. Everything to Daniel, simple and clean." "What about Rebecca?" I asked, confused. "Well, Rebecca has her own career, her own family. She's a doctor. She doesn't need the money the way Daniel and I do. And honestly, Mom, after how she's treated you, after how she's refused to accept me into the family, do you really want her to benefit from your life's work?" I was hurt by Rebecca's perceived rejection of me. And Charlotte was right. Rebecca had her own life, her own money. In my confused, drugged state, it seemed fair to leave everything to the child who'd stayed by my side. So I changed my will. Everything, the estate, the hotels, the rental properties, all $22 million, went to Daniel. Rebecca was left with a single sentence. "To my daughter Rebecca, I leave my love and best wishes." Charlotte watched me sign the new will with barely concealed triumph in her eyes, but I was too foggy to notice. 3 days after I signed the new will, Charlotte's plan entered its final phase. The morning it happened started like any other morning. Charlotte brought me my coffee, that poisoned coffee I'd been drinking for nearly 2 years without knowing it. I sipped it gratefully while she stood by the window, looking out at the garden. "Beautiful day," she said. "It is," I agreed, though everything looked slightly blurry to me lately. "Mom, Daniel, and I have been talking. We think it's time we had a serious family meeting. About your care, about your future." Something in her tone made me nervous. "What do you mean?" "Well, you've been getting worse. The doctors are concerned. We're concerned. We think it might be time to consider other options." "Other options?" "A care facility, Mom. Somewhere with trained professionals who can give you the kind of help you need." My heart started racing. I don't want to go to a facility. This is my home. Thomas and I built this home. Charlotte sat down on the edge of my bed, taking my hand. Her grip was gentle, but there was steel underneath. "I know this is scary, but Mom, you left the gas on again yesterday. You could have killed us all. Last week you took the car and got lost for 4 hours. The police found you 2 towns over, confused and disoriented. I don't remember that, I whispered. And I didn't. But that's because it never happened. Charlotte had faked the gas incident and fabricated the story about the car, but I didn't know that. That's exactly why we're worried, Charlotte said softly. You're forgetting dangerous things, and it's only going to get worse. Over the next 2 weeks, Charlotte and Daniel began the process of having me declared mentally incompetent. They hired lawyers, scheduled more appointments with Dr. Mitchell, gathered all the evidence Charlotte had been collecting for 2 years. Rebecca found out somehow, probably through the family lawyer who'd called her with concerns about the sudden changes to my will. She showed up at the house, demanding to see me. I watched from my bedroom window as Charlotte stood at the front door, blocking Rebecca's entry. You can't keep me from my mother, Rebecca shouted, loud enough for me to hear even through the closed window. Your mother doesn't want to see you, Charlotte replied calmly. She's made that very clear. You've been nothing but cruel to her for 2 years. That's a lie. I've been trying to reach her for 2 years, and you've blocked me at every turn. What have you done to her? I've taken care of her, something you couldn't be bothered to do. Let me in, or I swear I'll call the police. Call them. I have medical power of attorney now. I'm protecting Eleanor from your harassment. I tried to stand up, to go downstairs and tell Rebecca that yes, I wanted to see her, that I'd missed her terribly. But the room started spinning, and I had to sit back down. By the time my head cleared, Rebecca's car was pulling away, and Charlotte was coming up the stairs with a sympathetic expression on her face. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Mom. Rebecca is still being so difficult. I tried to be kind, but she just won't accept that you're sick. Maybe I should talk to her, I said weakly. Maybe when you're feeling better, Charlotte replied. Right now you need to conserve your energy. The competency hearing is next week. The words hit me like a physical blow. Competency hearing? It's just a formality, Mom. The doctors need to officially assess your condition so we can make sure you get the best care. Daniel will be there. I'll be there. It's nothing to worry about. But I was worried. Terrified, actually. A competency hearing meant they were going to determine whether I was capable of making my own decisions, of managing my own affairs. Charlotte, I'm not that bad. I'm still me. I can still... Mom, she interrupted gently. You asked me this morning if Thomas was coming home for dinner. You don't remember, do you? I didn't remember, but I also knew I would never ask that. Thomas had been dead for 5 years. I knew he was dead. I grieved him every single day. Unless I really was losing my mind. Unless the dementia was worse than I thought. That doubt was exactly what Charlotte had been cultivating for 2 years. The uncertainty, the fear, the slow erosion of my confidence in my own mind. The day of the competency hearing arrived cold and gray, matching my mood perfectly. Charlotte had picked out my clothes, a simple dress that was actually 2 sizes too big for me. I had lost weight over the past 2 years, though I hadn't noticed. The drugs had suppressed my appetite. You look lovely, Mom, Charlotte lied, though I looked haggard and frail, exactly how she wanted me to look. The courthouse was everything I'd feared, imposing, cold, filled with strangers who were going to judge whether I was competent to run my own life. Daniel met us there, looking uncomfortable in his suit. He hugged me, and I could feel him trembling. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. This is for your own good. You'll see. The hearing was held in a small room rather than a full courtroom. There was a judge, a stern woman in her 50s named Judge Sarah Brennan, and a court reporter, and lawyers for both sides. Or rather, lawyers for Daniel and Charlotte's side. I didn't have representation because I didn't even know I was legally entitled to fight this. The prosecuting attorney, not prosecuting me exactly, but that's what it felt like, was a smooth-talking man named James Whitmore. He presented his case with clinical efficiency. Your Honor, We're here today because Daniel Patterson, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson's son, is seeking legal guardianship of his mother due to her mental incapacity. As the evidence will show, Mrs. Patterson is suffering from advanced dementia and is no longer capable of managing her substantial financial assets or making sound decisions about her own care. Advanced dementia. The words echoed in my head. How had it become advanced? Dr. Mitchell had said early onset. When had it gotten worse? The first witness was Dr. Harrison Mitchell himself, testifying via videoconference from his office. Dr. Mitchell, Attorney Whitmore began, you've been treating Mrs. Patterson for approximately 2 years, is that correct? That's correct. And what is your professional assessment of her condition? Dr. Mitchell looked appropriately grave. Mrs. Patterson is suffering from rapidly progressing dementia, likely Alzheimer's disease. Her cognitive function has deteriorated significantly over the past 2 years. She experiences frequent memory loss, temporal disorientation, and episodes of confusion that pose a serious risk to her safety and the safety of those around her. Every word was a knife in my heart. This respected doctor, this man with all those degrees on his wall, was saying I was mentally incompetent. How could I argue with that? Can you provide specific examples of Mrs. Patterson's deterioration? Whitmore asked. Certainly. Mrs. Patterson frequently forgets conversations within minutes of having them. She has left appliances on, creating fire hazards. She's gotten lost, driving familiar routes. She's confused about whether her deceased husband is still alive. These are all classic signs of severe cognitive decline. In your professional opinion, is Mrs. Patterson capable of managing a $22 million estate? Absolutely not. She needs full-time professional care and should not be making any financial or medical decisions independently. The judge asked a few questions, but I could see she was already convinced. Dr. Mitchell was a respected expert. Why would he lie? I didn't know then that Charlotte had paid him $50,000 to provide false testimony. I didn't know that he'd already done this for her twice before with her previous husbands. Next came the witnesses, neighbors and acquaintances who'd supposedly seen my deterioration firsthand. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, who lived 3 houses down, testified that she'd seen me wandering around my garden at night, talking to people who weren't there. I did walk in the garden at night, but I was talking to Thomas's memory, not hallucinating. There's a difference. Mr. James Chen, who played golf with Daniel, testified that I'd called him by Thomas's name at a neighborhood party and asked him how business was going. That never happened. I'd never even spoken to James Chen beyond polite hellos. One after another, they came forward with their fabricated stories, and I sat there unable to defend myself, unable to prove that these were all lies. Then Charlotte took the stand. She looked perfect. A cream-colored suit, pearl earrings, hair pulled back in a simple bun. She was the picture of a devoted daughter-in-law bearing a terrible burden. Mrs. Patterson, Whitmore began, how long have you been living with and caring for your mother-in-law? 2 years, Charlotte replied, her voice soft and sad, since shortly after I married Daniel. And during that time, have you observed changes in Mrs. Patterson's mental state? Yes. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. It's been heartbreaking. Mom was such a vibrant, intelligent woman. But over the past 2 years, I've watched her slowly lose herself. She forgets things constantly. She repeats questions over and over. Last month, she left the gas stove on for 3 hours. We could have all died. Lies, all lies. But Charlotte sold them beautifully. Has Mrs. Patterson ever become confused about her deceased husband? Frequently. She sets a place for him at dinner. She waits for him to come home. Once, she even tried to call his office, not remembering that he passed away 5 years ago. It's devastating to watch. I wanted to stand up and scream that it wasn't true. But a small voice in my head whispered, "Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain you've never done these things? You can't remember everything anymore." That doubt, that fear, it kept me silent. In your opinion, can Mrs. Patterson continue to live independently? Charlotte shook her head, tears now streaming down her face. No. I'm terrified of what might happen if she's left alone. Last week, I found her about to take medication that wasn't prescribed to her. She thought they were vitamins, if I hadn't stopped her. What do you believe is the best course of action for Mrs. Patterson? She needs professional care, a facility where trained nurses can watch her 24/7, where she can't hurt herself or others. Daniel and I have researched the best memory care facilities in the state. Greenwood Manor has an excellent reputation. We've already secured her a place there. They'd already picked out my prison. This hearing wasn't about determining whether I needed care. It was rubber stamping a decision they'd already made. When it was my turn to speak, I stood on shaky legs. The judge looked at me with pity. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to say something? Your Honor, I began, my voice trembling. I'm not as bad as they're saying. Yes, I forget things sometimes. Yes, I get confused occasionally, but I'm still capable of making my own decisions. This is my home, my life. Thomas and I built everything together. I can't just give it all up. Mrs. Patterson, the judge said gently, do you remember what you had for breakfast this morning? I froze. I couldn't remember. Charlotte had brought me something, toast maybe? Or was it cereal? The drugs in my coffee had made everything foggy. I'm not sure. Charlotte made breakfast. I was still waking up. Do you remember what day of the week it is? Another pause. Was it Tuesday? Wednesday? Thursday? I guessed. It's Monday, Mrs. Patterson. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I'd been so sure it was later in the week. Do you remember your daughter's name? Rebecca, I said immediately, relieved to have an answer I was certain of. And when did you last speak with her? I tried to remember. Weeks ago? Months? I'm not sure exactly. We've had some disagreements. Mrs. Patterson, according to your daughter's testimony, the judge shuffled through some papers. She's been trying to contact you regularly for 2 years, and you've refused all communication. Is that accurate? Rebecca's been trying to contact me? I looked at Charlotte, confused. I didn't know that. You see, Your Honor, Charlotte interjected gently. Mom forgets these conversations. I've told her many times about Rebecca's calls, but she doesn't retain the information. It was masterful. Every question, every answer, every interaction designed to make me look more and more incompetent. The judge deliberated for exactly 47 minutes. When she returned, her expression told me everything I needed to know. After reviewing all the evidence presented, this court finds that Eleanor Patterson lacks the mental capacity to manage her financial affairs or make decisions regarding her own welfare. Legal guardianship and control of all assets are hereby granted to her son, Daniel Patterson. Mrs. Patterson is ordered to be placed in the care of Greenwood Manor Memory Care Facility, effective immediately. The gavel came down like a death sentence. I sat there, completely numb, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I'd lost everything. My home, my independence, my money, my life, all in the span of a 2-hour hearing. Daniel looked sick, continued 2250, like he might vomit. To his credit, I don't think he felt good about what had just happened, but he'd been convinced it was necessary, convinced it was for my own good. Charlotte, on the other hand, had a look of barely concealed triumph in her eyes. She'd won. She'd gotten exactly what she'd been working toward for 2 years. As I was being led from the courtroom by a healthcare worker from Greenwood Manor, Charlotte leaned in close and whispered, so only I could hear, "You'll die alone in that facility, you pathetic old fool, and no one will even remember your name." Those words, so cold, so cruel, so utterly different from the sweet daughter-in-law she'd pretended to be. Those words finally woke something up inside me, something that had been drugged and suppressed and beaten down for 2 years. Rage, pure burning rage at what this woman had done to me, at how she'd stolen my life while pretending to care for me, at how she'd turned my son against me, separated me from my daughter, and was about to lock me away to die. But beneath the rage was something even more powerful, the knowledge that something was wrong, that I wasn't as sick as they were claiming, that somewhere, somehow, there was a truth I was missing. I just had to find it. Chapter 4. Greenwood Manor and the Discovery. Greenwood Manor wasn't actually a manor at all. It was a sterile, clinical facility that smelled of disinfectant and decay. My room was a small box with a single bed, a nightstand, and a window that looked out onto a courtyard where other residents shuffled around in drugged hazes. The first thing the nurses did was take away my belongings. No phone. You might get confused and call people. No internet, too stimulating for patients with dementia. No real clothes, just hospital gowns and institutional pajamas. I was given a medication schedule that would have impressed a pharmacy. Pills for breakfast, pills for lunch, pills for dinner, pills before bed. I didn't know what any of them were, but the nurses insisted they were necessary for my condition. After 2 days of taking the medications they gave me, I realized something crucial. I felt worse, not better. More confused, more disoriented, more like the person everyone had claimed I was in court. So on the 3rd night, I stopped taking them. I'd hide the pills under my tongue, then spit them out when the nurse left. I'd palm them and slip them into the plant by the window. I'd pretend to swallow, then discreetly tuck them into my sleeve. Within 3 days of not taking the medications, my head began to clear. The fog that had been my constant companion for 2 years started to lift. I could think more clearly, remember more accurately, function more normally. That's when I understood. I wasn't sick. I'd never been sick. I'd been drugged. The realization hit me like a tsunami. For 2 years, Charlotte had been systematically poisoning me, documenting my drugged confusion as symptoms of dementia, and building a case to steal everything I had. But why? What did she gain from having me declared incompetent? Daniel already inherited everything through the will. Unless Daniel was just a stepping stone, unless Charlotte planned to use him to get control of the money, then what? I thought about Charlotte's sweet comments about Daniel's family history of diabetes, about how she'd mentioned several times that Daniel's father had died from complications of the disease, about how she'd encouraged Daniel to avoid doctors because he was so healthy. Oh God, she was planning to kill Daniel too. The pattern was clear now that I could think straight. Charlotte had married Daniel, moved into my home, spent 2 years drugging me and building a case for incompetency, gotten me locked away in this facility, and now she had complete control over a $22 million estate through her husband. All she had to do was eliminate Daniel, and she'd inherit everything as his widow. I had to get out. I had to warn Daniel. I had to stop her. But how? I was locked in a memory care facility with no phone, no computer, no way to contact anyone. The nurses thought I was severely demented. Daniel and Charlotte had made sure I had no visitors. Charlotte had put me on a restricted list, claiming that visitors caused me too much stress. The only person who might help me was Rebecca. If I could somehow get a message to her, she'd believe me. She'd been suspicious of Charlotte from the beginning. She'd tried to warn me. I watched the nurses carefully over the next few days, learning their routines. The day shift was strict and followed every rule. The night shift was understaffed and overworked. There was one nurse, Carla, who seemed kinder than the others. She'd actually talk to the residents like they were people, not just problems to be managed. On my 8th night at Greenwood Manor, I waited until Carla was on duty and asked if I could speak with her privately. "Mrs. Patterson, is everything all right?" "No," I said clearly, making sure my words were measured and rational. "Everything is not all right. I need to tell you something, and I need you to actually listen to me, not dismiss me as a confused old woman." Something in my tone made her pause. "I'm listening. I'm not sick. I never was. My daughter-in-law has been poisoning me for 2 years to make me appear demented so she could steal my money. She paid a doctor to give false testimony. She fabricated evidence, and now she has control of my entire estate, and I believe she's planning to kill my son." Carla looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. "Mrs. Patterson." "I know how that sounds," I interrupted. "I know it sounds exactly like what a paranoid dementia patient would say. But please, just think about this. Have you noticed how much clearer I am now than when I first arrived? How much more coherent?" She hesitated. "Well, yes, actually. Your charts say you should be more confused, but you've been quite lucid. Because I haven't been taking the medications they're giving me. Whatever Charlotte was putting in my coffee at home, whatever these pills are supposed to be treating, none of it is necessary because there's nothing wrong with me." "If that were true, wouldn't the doctors have noticed?"